Elena Martinez had learned to measure everything: risk, return, time. Even silence had a value she could calculate, especially when it cost her nothing to walk away. Tonight, the silence was expensive. It had cost her 3 hours of preparation, a reservation at a restaurant she would never have chosen herself, and the humiliation of sitting alone while the wait staff pretended not to notice. The glass of water in front of her had gone from cold to room temperature. She had not touched it. 23 times she had checked her watch in the past 47 minutes, each glance a small defeat, each minute stretching into something that felt less like waiting and more like public evidence of her miscalculation. She had trained herself not to fidget, not to check her phone compulsively, not to show weakness in public spaces where someone might recognize her. No one had recognized her tonight. That was the point. She had worn simple clothes, a black dress that could have come from any department store, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a way that made her look softer than she felt. The reservation was under a different name. The dating app profile had used her middle name only. For once, she wanted to be seen as a woman, not a balance sheet, but the man who was supposed to meet her had not bothered to show up. And now she was paying the price of her own experiment in vulnerability. Around her, the restaurant hummed with the easy conversations of people who belonged together. A couple at the next table leaned into each other, sharing a dessert with 2 spoons. Behind her, someone laughed. A real laugh, not the controlled professional sound Elena produced in board meetings. The linen napkin in her lap felt cold against her fingers. She had folded and refolded it 6 times, a nervous habit she thought she had eliminated years ago. The calculation came automatically: 3 hours of preparation, 2 hours of waiting, 1 hour of driving, 6 hours total. At her consulting rate, the one she charged sovereign wealth funds and Fortune 500 companies, this evening had cost $25,000 of her time. But there was no formula for measuring dignity, no spreadsheet cell for quantifying the specific flavor of sitting alone in an upscale restaurant, while strangers avoided making eye contact out of practiced Philadelphia politeness. She should have left 30 minutes ago. That would have been the smart move. Cut losses, preserve dignity, move on. But something kept her in the chair. Some stubborn refusal to admit that even a carefully controlled evening could spiral into failure. She had built an empire on knowing when to fold, and yet here she sat, watching the door like it owed her an explanation. 2 weeks ago, her assistant Priya had cornered her in the office. "You eat lunch at your desk, Elena. You work weekends. When was the last time you had a conversation that wasn't about ROI?" Elena had laughed it off, made some dismissive comment about priorities and focus. But that night, lying in her penthouse apartment with the city lights painting shadows across her ceiling, she had realized Priya was right. She couldn't remember the last time she had laughed, really laughed. Couldn't recall the last conversation that had made her feel something other than exhaustion or the low-grade anxiety that had become her baseline state. So she had let Priya create the profile. Just her middle name, a vague job description, a few carefully chosen photos that showed her face, but nothing that would trigger recognition. Marketing consultant instead of CEO. Enjoys quiet evenings instead of sleeps 4 hours a night and dreams in quarterly projections. And for what? To sit here alone, performing the role of woman who was stood up for an audience of strangers who were too polite to stare directly. At the table beside hers, a black man sat with the same stillness. She had noticed him when she first arrived, though she had not meant to. He was not the kind of man who demanded attention. His jacket was worn at the elbows, draped over the back of his chair in a way that suggested he had learned to make himself small in public spaces. He looked just slightly out of place in a room full of polished suits and curated laughter, like someone who had stepped into a world that had not really been built with him in mind and decided to sit anyway. His phone lay face down on the table. He had ordered water, just like her, and he had not touched it either. Elena did not look at him directly, but she was aware of him the way you become aware of another person in an empty waiting room. They were both waiting for something that was not coming. The difference was that he seemed resigned to it, while she was still calculating how much longer she could justify staying before it became pathetic. Everyone else in the restaurant moved, talking, gesturing, checking phones, signaling waiters. This man just sat, too still, like someone who had spent years learning to be invisible, who understood that taking up space in certain rooms required a kind of careful negotiation. Elena understood that negotiation from a different angle. She had spent her career learning to command rooms, to make her presence undeniable. But tonight, she had wanted the opposite. She had wanted to disappear into anonymity, to be just another woman on a date, to find out what it felt like to be seen without the weight of her net worth preceding her. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. The man shifted in his seat. Elena kept her eyes on the door, but she could feel him turning slightly toward her. When he spoke, his voice was low enough that it felt like a secret, like something shared rather than announced. Your blind date didn't show up either. Not a question. Not exactly. More like naming the thing both of them were sitting in, the shared absurdity of being stood up in the same restaurant at the same time. Elena's first instinct was to shut it down. She had perfected the art of the polite dismissal, the kind of response that closed a conversation before it could begin. The words formed automatically. I'm fine. Thank you. Cold, controlled, final. But something in his voice stopped her. He was not hitting on her. He was not trying to rescue her or insert himself into her evening. He was simply acknowledging reality, the uncomfortable, embarrassing reality that neither of them could escape. She turned her head just slightly and met his eyes. They were tired, not in the way that suggested he had been working late or sleeping poorly, but in the way that comes from carrying something heavy for a long time. Deep brown skin catching the low light of the restaurant, revealing the kind of exhaustion that had settled into bones and muscle memory. The slight lines at the corners of his eyes suggested he smiled often, or used to, before whatever weight he carried made smiling harder. No. The word came out sharper than she intended, defensive habit kicking in before she could stop it. She softened it with a small, reluctant smile. Apparently not. The man nodded as if this confirmed something he already suspected. He did not offer sympathy or try to fill the silence with platitudes. He just looked at her for a moment, then looked away. And somehow, that made it easier to breathe. The absence of pity felt like oxygen. First time? His voice still quiet, like he was trying not to disturb the air between them. Elena considered lying. She was good at lying when it served a purpose, but the truth felt safer in this moment, with a stranger who had no reason to judge her and no way to use it against her. Yes, she admitted. You? The man let out a short breath, something that was almost a laugh but not quite. The sound carried years of practiced disappointment, the kind that comes from expecting little and still finding ways to be let down. First time in a long time. I wasn't even sure I wanted to come, but my neighbor offered to watch my son, and I thought, why not? Worst case, I'd sit here for an hour and go home. Turns out that's exactly what happened. Elena felt something shift in her chest, a small crack in the armor she had spent years building. He had a son. That detail should not have mattered, but it did. It made him real in a way that most people were not. Most people she met wanted something from her, even if they did not know who she was. But this man, a father whose life clearly did not revolve around her, had a responsibility that was bigger than a failed date. And somehow, that made him safer. The word son hung in the air between them, changing the equation. This was not just a lonely man at a restaurant. This was someone who had negotiated childcare, who had chosen to spend a rare, free evening on the possibility of connection, who had something to lose beyond just his time. "How old?" Elena asked, surprising herself with the question. The man's face changed when he answered. The tiredness did not leave, but something else appeared underneath it. Something warm and unmistakable. 7. Jordan. He wanted me to bring him back dessert. I told him I'd try, but I don't think they let you order takeout when you've been sitting here alone for 45 minutes. Elena found herself almost smiling. The image arrived unbidden. A 7-year-old negotiating dessert as the price of his father's absence, both of them trying to make the evening mean something. They might make an exception. Pity policy. The man glanced at her, and this time there was a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Is that what we're operating under now? Pity? Mutual pity, Elena corrected, the words coming easier than they should have. It's less pathetic that way. He did laugh then, quietly, and Elena felt the tension in her shoulders ease just slightly. She was not good at this. Small talk, casual conversation, the kind of lightness that other people seemed to carry effortlessly. In her world, every word had weight. Every sentence carried subtext about market position or negotiating leverage. But with him, it did not feel like performance. It felt like two people acknowledging the same uncomfortable truth and finding it slightly less uncomfortable together. The man extended his hand across the small space between their tables. Marcus. Elena looked at his hand. Dark brown skin, calloused palms, nails cut short and clean. The kind of hand that worked with tools or spent time outdoors. Not the manicured hands of executives she spent her days negotiating with. These were hands that built things, fixed things, carried weight. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Instinct, habit, the perpetual vetting process that had become automatic. Then she reached out and shook it. His grip was firm but not aggressive, the handshake of someone who had learned to be careful with his strength. Elena, she said. She did not offer her last name. He did not ask for it. Marcus withdrew his hand and settled back into his chair. He did not try to move closer or suggest they combine tables. He seemed to understand that whatever this was, it existed in the space between them, and moving it would break it. So, Marcus said, his voice still carrying that same quiet tone. What do we do now? Do we keep waiting or do we admit defeat and go home? Elena considered the question. She could leave. She should leave. There was work waiting for her at home. Emails that needed responses. Reports that needed reviewing. She had built her entire life around the idea that time was a resource that could not be wasted. And yet sitting here with this stranger who asked nothing of her, who did not even know who she was, felt like the first thing she had done in months that was not a waste. I don't know, Elena said honestly. I've never been in this situation before. Marcus nodded slowly. Me neither. But I'm thinking if we're both already here and we both already got stood up, maybe we just talk for a little while. Not a date, just two people who got unlucky at the same time. Elena felt the weight of the decision pressing on her. She had spent so long building walls, learning to control every variable, to never let anyone close enough to see the parts of her that were not polished and powerful. But Marcus was not asking to see those parts. He was not asking for anything except a conversation, and maybe that was exactly what made it so dangerous. The word unlucky echoed in her mind. Was it unlucky? Or was this, sitting here, about to talk to someone who knew nothing about her quarterly earnings or expansion strategies, the first lucky thing that had happened to her in years? Okay, the words slipped out before she could second-guess herself. But no last names, no job titles, no talk about what we do or where we live. Just this. Marcus studied her for a moment, and she could see him processing the boundaries she was setting. Most men would have pushed back, would have tried to charm their way past the rules, but Marcus just nodded. Just this, he agreed. Deal. Elena felt something strange and unfamiliar settle in her chest. It was not quite relief, not quite anticipation. It was the feeling of standing at the edge of something unknown and choosing to step forward anyway, even though every instinct told her to retreat. Marcus signaled to the waiter, who approached with the careful neutrality of someone who had seen too many awkward dates to be surprised by anything. Marcus ordered coffee. Elena ordered the same, though she rarely drank it this late. It felt important to match him, to equalize the dynamic, to make it clear that this was not him rescuing her or her condescending to his company. When the waiter left, Marcus leaned back in his chair and looked at her with an expression that was hard to read. Not curiosity exactly, more like recognition, as if he saw something in her that he understood without needing an explanation. You looked like you were about to leave when I first spoke to you, like you were calculating the exact right moment to go. Elena felt exposed in a way that was both uncomfortable and oddly thrilling. I was. I don't like being somewhere I'm not supposed to be. Marcus tilted his head slightly. And where are you supposed to be? Elena opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. The question was simple, but the answer was not. Where was she supposed to be? In her office, closing deals and managing portfolios? In her empty apartment, eating takeout alone while reviewing quarterly reports? In rooms full of people who only spoke to her because of what she could give them? I don't know, Elena said quietly. I used to know, but lately I'm not sure anymore. Marcus did not respond right away. He just looked at her. And in that look, Elena felt something she had not felt in years. She felt seen, not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, not as someone with power or influence or connections, just as a person who was tired and uncertain and sitting in a restaurant because she had hoped for one night that something might be different. Me too, Marcus said finally. The simplicity of those two words made Audrey's throat tighten. No elaboration, no qualification, no attempt to fix or solve or redirect. Just acknowledgement that he understood, that he was carrying the same confusion about where he belonged and who he was supposed to be. The coffee arrived, and they both wrapped their hands around the warm cups, letting the moment stretch between them. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to the small, fragile thing beginning to take shape at two tables pushed just slightly too close together. Elena took a sip of coffee. Bitter. Too hot. Exactly what she needed to ground herself in the present moment. Across the narrow space between their tables, Marcus did the same. And for a few seconds they existed in parallel. Two people drinking coffee they did not really want, extending an evening that should have ended an hour ago. Can I ask you something? Marcus broke the silence, his tone careful, as if testing whether the question was allowed under the rules she had set. Elena tensed slightly, instinct kicking in. Depends on the question. Marcus considered this, then nodded as if accepting the terms. Why did you agree to a blind date in the first place? You don't seem like someone who does things without a reason. Elena felt the question land somewhere deeper than she wanted it to. She took another sip of coffee, buying time, weighing how much truth she could afford to give away. The rules she had set still held. No job titles, no real identities. But the question was not about what she did. It was about why she was here, and that felt harder to deflect. I wanted to see if I could, Elena said finally. If I could just be someone sitting across from another person without all the other things in the way. Marcus watched her carefully. What other things? Elena looked down at her hands, folded neatly on the table. They were hands that signed contracts worth millions, hands that had built something most people would never achieve. But tonight, they were just hands. Expectations, Elena said quietly. People expect things from me. They see what I can give them before they see me. I thought maybe just once I could meet someone who didn't know anything about me and wouldn't want anything either. Marcus absorbed this without comment. He did not offer empty reassurances or tell her she was being too cynical. He just sat with it, and somehow that made it easier to have said it out loud. I get that, Marcus said after a moment. Not in the same way, maybe. But I know what it's like to feel like people only see one part of you. Elena looked up, meeting his eyes. What part do they see? Marcus shifted in his seat, his expression thoughtful. The dad part. That's the thing people know first. I'm Jordan's dad. I'm the guy at the school pickup. I'm the one who leaves work early to make it to soccer practice. Sometimes the only black dad in a line of SUVs. And that's fine. I love being his dad. But sometimes I forget there used to be other parts of me too. Elena felt something twist in her chest. She understood that better than she wanted to admit. She had spent so many years building her career, pouring everything into becoming someone who mattered in the world, that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to matter in a smaller, quieter way. The image arrived sharp and unbidden, Marcus standing among a line of expensive cars, his worn jacket and practical sedan marking him as different, Jordan running toward him with the unself-conscious joy of a child who does not yet understand what those differences mean. And Marcus catching him, swinging him up, performing the role of father so completely that everything else about him disappeared. How long has it been since his mother? Elena asked, the question escaping before she could consider whether it violated some unspoken boundary. Marcus looked surprised by the question, but not uncomfortable. 3 years. She left when Jordan was 4, decided motherhood wasn't what she thought it would be. I don't blame her for leaving. I just wish she'd figured it out before we had a kid together. Elena heard the careful neutrality in his voice, the way he was trying not to sound bitter, even though he had every right to be. She respected that. It would have been easy to vilify someone who walked away, but Marcus seemed to understand that people were more complicated than that. That must have been hard, Elena said, and she meant it. Marcus shrugged, but the gesture was heavy. It was. Still is some days. But Jordan's good. He's happy, and I'm getting better at being both people for him. The fun parent and the responsible one. Elena watched him as he spoke about his son, the way his whole posture changed. The tiredness was still there, but so was something else, something solid and unshakable. Marcus was a man who had built his life around someone other than himself, and there was a kind of strength in that she had never understood before, had never allowed herself to understand. The waiter passed their tables, refilling water glasses neither of them had touched. The small interruption created a natural pause, and Elena found herself wondering what Marcus saw when he looked at her. Did he see the tension she carried in her shoulders, the way her fingers had returned to folding the napkin in precise creases? The expensive watch she had forgotten to remove, the one detail that did not match her carefully constructed anonymity. Do you ever resent it? Elena asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Having to be everything for him? Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and Elena realized she had revealed more than she intended. The question was not just about him. It was about her, about the life she had chosen, about whether giving everything to one thing meant losing everything else, sometimes. Marcus admitted, his honesty cutting through the careful diplomacy most people offered. Not often, but yeah, sometimes I wake up and I don't remember who I was before I became someone's entire world. And then I feel guilty for even thinking that because he didn't ask for any of this. He just deserves a parent who shows up. Elena felt a lump forming in her throat. She had spent so long convincing herself that she had made the right choice, that success and independence were worth the loneliness. But sitting here with Marcus, listening to him talk about the weight of being needed, she wondered if she had just been afraid of exactly that, of being someone's entire world and failing them. "I don't have kids," Elena said, and the words came out more hollow than she intended. "I thought about it years ago, but the timing was never right. And then I got busy, and the years kept passing, and now I'm not sure if I even want that anymore, or if I just convinced myself I don't, because it's easier." Marcus did not try to fix it, or tell her it was not too late. He just nodded as if he understood that some admissions did not need solutions, that sometimes the most honest thing you could do was acknowledge the loss without trying to minimize it. They sat in that shared understanding for a while, the noise of the restaurant fading into background static. Elena realized she had not checked her phone once since they started talking. That was unusual for her. She was the kind of person who kept one eye on notifications even during important meetings, always ready to pivot if something more urgent came up. But tonight, nothing felt more urgent than this. "Can I tell you something?" Elena said, the words coming out before she could think better of them. Marcus looked at her with that same steady attention he had given her all evening. "Yeah." Elena took a breath. "I eat dinner alone almost every night. In my apartment, at my desk, with my laptop open and my phone within reach. I tell myself it's because I'm busy, because there's always work to do. But the truth is, I don't know how to do it any other way anymore. I don't know how to sit across from someone and just talk without an agenda." The confession hung in the air between them. Elena waited for the judgment, the pity, the awkward platitude that would make her regret saying it. But Marcus did not give her any of those things. "You're doing it now," Marcus said simply. Elena blinked, caught off guard. "What?" Marcus gestured to the space between them, to the cold coffee and the two tables that felt closer than they had an hour ago. "You're sitting across from someone. You're talking. No agenda. Just this." Elena felt something crack open inside her, something she had been holding closed for so long she had forgotten it was there. He was right. She was doing it. And it did not feel like failure. It felt like relief. "I guess I am," Elena said softly. Marcus smiled, and it was the kind of smile that did not demand anything in return. "See? Not so hard." "Harder than you'd think." Elena found herself smiling back, a real smile that reached her eyes. They fell into another silence, but this one felt different. It was not the silence of two people waiting for something to happen. It was the silence of two people who had found a small, unexpected corner of comfort and were trying to figure out how long they could stay in it. Marcus glanced at his phone, which was still face down on the table, then looked away. Elena noticed the gesture. He was aware of time passing, aware that he had somewhere else to be, but he was not rushing to leave. That said something she could not quite name. "Your neighbor," Elena said, thinking of the detail he had mentioned earlier. "Do you do this a lot? Ask them to watch Jordan." Marcus shook his head. "Not really. She offered tonight because she knew I hadn't been out in a while. I think she felt sorry for me." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Should she?" Marcus laughed, a quiet sound that was almost self-deprecating. "Maybe. I'm not exactly living the dream. But I'm doing okay. Jordan's doing okay. That's enough most days." Elena heard the unspoken part of that sentence. Most days, but not all of them. Most days it was enough to be a good father and a decent person and to keep the bills paid. But some days he wanted more. He wanted to be seen as something other than a caretaker. He wanted to remember what it felt like to be desired, to be interesting, to be someone worth showing up for. She understood that too, more than she wanted to admit. "Why tonight?" Elena asked. Why did you finally say yes to a blind date? Marcus looked at her, and for the first time all evening, she saw something vulnerable in his expression. Because Jordan asked me if I was lonely. He said it out of nowhere, just looked up at me and asked. And I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell him no, that I was fine, that we were fine together. But I couldn't lie to him. Elena felt her chest tighten. What did you tell him? Marcus looked down at his hands, his dark brown fingers laced together on the table. I told him that sometimes grown-ups get lonely too, but that doesn't mean anything is wrong. And then he said I should go on a date because that's what people do when they're lonely. He's 7. He shouldn't have to worry about me like that. Elena felt the weight of that admission settle over her. Marcus had come here tonight not because he was looking for love or connection, but because his son had noticed something was missing, and he did not want to be the kind of father who taught his child that loneliness was normal. That's why I'm here too, Elena said quietly. Not because of a child, but because I realized I'd stopped trying. I'd convinced myself that being alone was the same as being independent. And then one day I looked around and realized I didn't have anyone to call when something good happened or when something bad happened. I just had work. Marcus met her eyes, and in that moment, something shifted between them. They were not just two strangers sharing a table anymore. They were two people who had arrived at the same place from completely different directions, both carrying the same quiet, stubborn hope that maybe there was another way to live. Do you think it's too late? Elena asked, and she hated how small her voice sounded. To learn how to do this? To let people in? Marcus considered the question seriously, as if it mattered to him as much as it did to her. I don't know, but I think if we're asking the question, that means we're not done trying yet. Elena felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, and she blinked them back quickly. She did not cry in public. She did not cry in front of strangers. But Marcus was not quite a stranger anymore, and the kindness in his voice was harder to defend against than she had expected. I'm glad you were here tonight, Elena said, the words coming out rough. Even if neither of us were supposed to be. Marcus reached across the space between their tables, not to touch her, but just to close the distance a little. Me too. And then his phone buzzed, face up now, and they both saw the screen light up with a call. Marcus looked at it, and Elena saw the shift in his expression, the way he went from present to divided in the space of a second. It's my neighbor, Marcus said, his voice tight. I should take this. Elena nodded, already pulling back, already feeling the walls starting to rebuild themselves. Marcus answered the call, his voice low and concerned, and Elena watched as he listened to whatever was being said on the other end. His face changed, worry creasing his forehead. When he hung up, he looked at her with something that might have been regret. Jordan woke up. He's asking for me. I need to go. Elena felt the evening collapsing around her, the fragile thing they had built together suddenly exposed to the cold reality of the world outside this restaurant. Of course, she kept her voice steady. You should go. Marcus stood, reaching for his worn jacket and pulling it on with quick, practiced movements. But he did not leave immediately. He stood there, looking at her like he was trying to memorize something he was afraid he would forget. I didn't want this to end like this, Marcus said. Elena forced a small smile, defensive habit rising up to protect her before disappointment could land. Nothing lasts anyway. The words came out more bitter than she intended, and she saw Marcus process that bitterness, saw him recognize the wall she was rebuilding, brick by brick. Then he pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and held it out to her. I don't know if this breaks your rules, Marcus said, but I'd like to see you again, if you want. Elena stared at the phone, at the contact screen, waiting for her to type in her number. Every instinct told her to say no, to protect herself, to end this before it became something that could hurt her. But then she thought about going home to her empty apartment, to her laptop and her cold dinners, and her life that was so carefully controlled it had stopped feeling like a life at all. Her hands shook slightly as she took the phone and typed in her number. No last name, just Elena. Marcus took the phone back and looked at the screen, then looked at her. "I'll text you. So you have mine too." Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Marcus hesitated one more time, then turned and walked toward the door. Elena watched him go, watched the way he moved through the restaurant, the unhurried stride of a black man who knew eyes might be on him and chose to move gently through the space anyway. Not aggressive, not apologetic, just present and careful in the way people learn to be when the world does not always make room for them. And then he was gone, and she was alone again, sitting in front of a glass of water she had never touched. Her phone buzzed a moment later. She looked down and saw a text from an unknown number. "It was nice to meet you, Elena. Take care of yourself." Elena stared at the words on her screen, standing on the cold sidewalk outside the restaurant. People flowed around her like water around stone, everyone with somewhere to be, someone to meet, a life that extended beyond this single moment. She typed back carefully, each word weighed and measured. "I hope you got home safe. Thank you for tonight. It meant more than you probably realize." She sent it before she could delete it, then immediately regretted how careful it sounded, how controlled, but Marcus did not seem to mind. "Unexpected is good. I could use more of that." Elena found herself smiling at the screen, a small, involuntary smile that felt foreign on her face. She typed back quickly. "How's Jordan?" The response came a moment later. "Already back asleep. He had a bad dream. Sometimes he just needs to know I'm here." Elena felt her throat tighten, reading that. Marcus had left not because he wanted to, but because his son needed him, and he had not hesitated. That kind of certainty, that immediate prioritization of someone else's needs, was something Elena had never experienced. She had spent her whole life making decisions based on what would advance her career, protect her position, maximize her returns. The idea of dropping everything for another person, of being needed in that absolute way, felt both terrifying and deeply, achingly lonely. "You're a good father. He's lucky to have you." Marcus did not respond right away, and Elena wondered if she had said too much, crossed some invisible line. But then her phone buzzed again. "I don't always feel like a good father, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do, right? Just keep trying." Elena stood on the sidewalk, her expensive car waiting in the parking structure 2 blocks away, and felt something inside her shift. Marcus was not perfect. He was not pretending to have it all figured out. He was just a man doing his best with what he had. And somehow that honesty was more compelling than any polished success story she had ever encountered. Elena's penthouse overlooked the Philadelphia skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Minimalist furniture, everything expensive, nothing personal, no photographs, no clutter. Her sanctuary, or her prison. She stood at the window, phone in hand, staring at the city lights below. Usually by 11 she was at her desk, laptop open, working through emails from Tokyo and London, preparing for morning meetings. Her routine was military in its consistency. Home by 11, work till 1, 5 hours of sleep, wake at 6. Repeat. For years this pattern had felt like discipline. Tonight it felt like surrender. Her laptop sat closed on the glass coffee table. First time in, she couldn't remember how long. The phone buzzed again in her hand. "Can I ask you something?" Elena's heart rate picked up slightly. A physiological response she noticed with the same clinical detachment she applied to quarterly reports. She typed back, "Always." The word felt reckless the moment she sent it. Always was a promise, and Elena had built her empire on never promising what she couldn't guarantee. But something about Marcus made her want to be reckless. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Marcus was choosing his words carefully. Elena appreciated that more than she could articulate. Do you think people like us can actually do this? Build something real when our lives are so different? Elena read the message 3 times, felt the weight of it settle in her chest like a physical object. He was asking what she had been calculating since he walked out of the restaurant. The probability of success, the risk factors, the variables that could destroy this before it began. But Marcus wasn't asking for a risk assessment. He was asking if she was brave enough to try. She sat on the couch, cream-colored leather that had never been sat on except by interior designers staging photos. The cushion was still stiff, unyielding. Even her furniture had not been broken in by use. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct screamed to hedge, to qualify, to leave herself an exit strategy. But she thought about Marcus's calloused hands and Jordan's request for dessert and the way Marcus had said, "You're doing it now," like it was the simplest truth in the world. I don't know, but I think the fact that we're both asking means we want to try, and maybe that's enough to start with. She typed it fast before her rational brain could intervene. The message delivered with a small whoosh sound that felt disproportionately significant. Marcus's response came almost immediately. I do. 2 words. No qualification, no hedging, no exit strategy. Just clarity. Elena felt tears threatening. Actual tears, the kind she had trained herself not to produce in board meetings or depositions, or any of the hundreds of situations where showing emotion meant showing weakness. She blinked them back through pure force of will. I'd like to see you again, if that's something you want too. Her finger hit send before the voice in her head could catalog all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Tomorrow night. Same restaurant, 7 o'clock. Elena stared at her own words on the screen. Tomorrow, not next week, not let me check my schedule, not any of the careful delays she usually deployed. Tomorrow. The boldness of it felt like stepping off a cliff. I'll be there. And this time, I won't stand you up. Neither will I. They said goodnight after that, and Elena set her phone on the coffee table beside her closed laptop. She sat in the silence of her expensive apartment, listening to the ambient hum of climate control and her own breathing. Through the windows, Philadelphia spread out in geometric patterns of light and shadow. Millions of people living lives that intersected and diverged in ways Elena had stopped trying to understand years ago. She had spent her entire adult life trying to control outcomes, to eliminate variables, to build systems that functioned independently of human unpredictability. But sitting here, thinking about Marcus and the way his voice had dropped when he talked about Jordan, she realized control had cost her something she couldn't quantify on a balance sheet. Elena stood and walked to her bedroom, king bed with hotel-grade linens, closet the size of a studio apartment, everything in its designated place. She should sleep. Morning would arrive with its usual demands. Board meeting at 8, investor call at 10, lunch with the managing director of a fund considering a $50 million commitment. Instead, she lay on top of the covers, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about a man who ordered coffee he probably didn't want, and asked questions that had no strategic purpose. Sleep, when it finally came, felt different, lighter somehow, like she had put down something heavy without noticing she had been carrying it. Morning arrived with pale light filtering through curtains Elena had forgotten to close. She woke at 7 instead of 6, unprecedented deviation from routine. Reached for her phone not to check market updates or overnight emails, but to see if Marcus had texted. He had. Good morning. I know it's early, but I wanted to say thank you again for last night. I forgot what it felt like to talk to someone who actually listens. See you tonight. The message was time-stamped 6:15 a.m. Marcus was awake, probably getting Jordan ready for school, probably running through the same morning chaos Elena had observed in the lives of colleagues with children. The negotiation over breakfast, the search for lost shoes, the race against elementary school start times. Elena read the message 3 times before responding. Thank you for reminding me that I still know how. I'm looking forward to tonight. She sent it, then immediately wondered if looking forward to sounded too formal, too much like a calendar appointment. But Marcus responded with a simple thumbs-up emoji, and Elena felt the anxiety dissolve. At the office by 8:30, late by her standards, which meant Priya noticed immediately. Priya stood from her desk outside Elena's office, tablet in hand, eyebrows raised in an expression that managed to convey both concern and amusement. 26 years old, sharp as broken glass, with an MBA from Wharton and instincts that sometimes frightened Elena with their accuracy. You're late, and smiling. Did the date actually happen? Elena tried to deflect with her usual professional mask. It was fine. Nothing special. Priya narrowed her eyes, and Elena realized her mistake. Years of working together meant Priya could read her tells better than most poker players. You're lying. You never lie badly. What happened? Elena paused at her office door, briefcase in hand, caught between maintaining boundaries and the sudden, unfamiliar urge to tell someone the truth. I met someone. We talked. We're meeting again tonight. The words felt strange coming out of her mouth. Personal information shared voluntarily, without strategic purpose, just because Priya had asked and Elena wanted to tell her. Priya's expression shifted from amused to genuinely surprised. Talked? Just talked? Just talked, and it was the best conversation I've had in years. Priya studied her for a long moment, and Elena saw the analysis happening behind those sharp eyes, data points being collected and processed and filed away for future reference. You look different, lighter. Elena didn't deny it, couldn't deny it. She felt lighter, like someone had adjusted the gravity in her immediate vicinity. The morning passed in the usual parade of meetings and decisions, but Elena's attention kept fracturing. In the middle of a presentation on portfolio rebalancing, she found herself wondering what Marcus did all day. Was he on a construction site somewhere, running electrical wire through walls? Did he eat lunch with coworkers or alone in his truck? Did he think about her the way she was thinking about him, in stolen moments between obligations? At 3 o'clock, she did something unprecedented. Called Priya into her office and made a request that felt more significant than it should have. Clear my evening schedule. I'm leaving at 5. Priya's jaw actually dropped. You're leaving at 5? Who are you and what did you do with Elena Martinez? Elena felt a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Someone I used to know, apparently. Marcus dropped Jordan at his Saturday enrichment program, the red brick building where kids spent weekend mornings doing art and science projects. Jordan jumped out of the Honda, backpack bouncing. Did you have fun last night, Dad? Yeah, buddy, I did. Are you going to see her again? Tonight. Is she going to be my new mom? Marcus crouched down to eye level. Whoa, slow down. I just met her. We're just getting to know each other. Jordan's expression suggested this explanation was insufficient. Okay, but if you like her and she likes you, that's what happens next, right? Marcus had no answer for 7-year-old logic. He kissed Jordan's forehead, watched him run inside, then stood in the parking lot feeling the weight of parenthood and possibility in equal measure. At the construction site, Marcus worked alongside Dave, 53 years old, white, from South Philly, union electrician for 30 years. They were running conduit through a new medical office building, repetitive work that left plenty of room for conversation. Dave glanced over from his section of wall. You're quiet today. More than usual. Marcus fed wire through the conduit, hands moving with practiced efficiency. Just thinking. About? Went on a date last night. Dave's surprise was evident in the pause before he responded. Yeah? How'd it go? Good. really good. Seeing her again tonight. She got a name? Elena. Elena what? Marcus smiled to himself, remembering the rules she had set. Don't know. We didn't do last names. Dave laughed. Modern dating, man. Good luck tonight. Marcus worked through the afternoon thinking about Elena's hands folding that napkin in precise creases, the way her shoulders had relaxed incrementally as they talked, the unexpected vulnerability when she admitted eating dinner alone every night. He thought about how she had looked at him when he said, "You're doing it now," like he had given her permission to believe something she had wanted to believe, but couldn't let herself. At 4 o'clock, he texted Mrs. Chen to confirm she could watch Jordan overnight. Her response came immediately. Of course, have fun. Don't rush back. Mrs. Chen had been his neighbor for 3 years, had watched Jordan more times than Marcus could count, had never asked for payment beyond Marcus fixing things around her house that broke with increasing frequency. She was 72, Chinese-American, widowed, with grown children who visited twice a year and called every Sunday like clockwork. Marcus picked up Jordan from after-school care at 5:30. They went home to the small 2-bedroom apartment that always felt slightly too warm in summer and slightly too cold in winter, where Jordan's drawings covered the refrigerator and thrift store furniture bore the marks of hard use and careful maintenance. Jordan helped Marcus pick out a shirt, the blue one, because Jordan had opinions about color coordination that Marcus lacked. Are you nervous? Marcus adjusted his collar in the bathroom mirror, Jordan watching from the doorway. Yeah, buddy, little bit. Why? You're great. Marcus felt his throat tighten at the uncomplicated certainty in his son's voice. Thanks, fashion consultant. Are you nervous she won't like you? Marcus crouched down again, eye level with Jordan. Sometimes being great isn't enough. Sometimes people just don't fit together, and that's nobody's fault. Jordan frowned, processing this. Then she's making a poor choice. Marcus laughed, despite the anxiety coiling in his stomach. Don't call people dumb, remember? I didn't. I said poor choice. That's different. They drove to Mrs. Chen's apartment 2 buildings over. She opened the door with a knowing smile that suggested she understood more about tonight than Marcus had told her. Have fun. Take your time. Jordan hugged Marcus at the door. Good luck, Dad. I hope she likes you as much as I do. Marcus drove away watching Jordan wave in the rearview mirror and thought about how all of this, the careful negotiation of childcare and Jordan's emotional needs and the possibility of adult connection, was so much more complicated than the dating he remembered from before fatherhood, before Shanice left, before he became someone whose romantic choices affected a 7-year-old's sense of security in the world. He arrived at Cornerstone Restaurant at 6:58, 2 minutes early, which was intentional. He sat in his car for 30 seconds, breathing, reminding himself that Elena had chosen to come back, that she wanted to be here, that this was not charity or pity, but mutual interest in whatever fragile thing had sparked between them. Inside, the restaurant felt different. Same tables, same low lighting, but charged with possibility instead of disappointment. Elena was already there, center of the room this time, not tucked into a corner. She wore dark jeans and a soft sweater that made her look younger than the controlled woman from last night. Her hair was down again, falling past her shoulders in a way that suggested she had spent time getting ready, that this mattered to her. Their eyes met across the restaurant. Marcus walked toward her, and she stood to greet him. Awkward moment of calculation, hug or handshake or nothing at all. Marcus solved it with a brief, careful hug that let him breathe in her perfume, something expensive and subtle that he couldn't name. They sat across from each other. The waiter approached immediately, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. Can I start you with drinks? Marcus looked at Elena. Coffee? She smiled, real smile, reaching her eyes. Coffee. The waiter left and they sat in silence that felt comfortable rather than pressured. Marcus leaned forward slightly, maintaining eye contact in a way he had learned made people feel heard rather than examined. So, tell me something true. Elena's breath caught, visible hitch in her chest, vulnerability crossing her face before she could mask it. The request was simple, but the ask was enormous, and Marcus could see her weighing what truth to offer, how much of herself to reveal. I had a panic attack 3 months ago. Her voice steady despite the admission. First one ever. Middle of a board meeting, presenting quarterly projections, and suddenly couldn't breathe. Had to excuse myself. Sat in a bathroom stall for 20 minutes, trying to remember how lungs work. Marcus listened without interrupting, without trying to fix or minimize or redirect. Just listened. Doctor said it was stress, prescribed medication, suggested therapy. I did neither, because admitting I needed help felt like admitting I was failing. And I don't fail. The coffee arrived. Neither of them touched it. But I am failing. I'm failing at being human. I can run a company with 200 employees. I can manage billion-dollar portfolios. But I can't remember the last time I laughed. Really laughed. Can't remember the last time I felt anything that wasn't exhaustion or anxiety. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Last night, sitting here with you, was the first time in months I felt something other than numb. And it terrified me. Still terrifies me. Tears appeared in her eyes. She blinked them back quickly, habit fighting against emotion. So that's my truth, Marcus. I'm successful and empty and so lonely I'm starting to forget what it feels like to be seen as anything other than a balance sheet. Marcus reached across the table, took her hand. Not a romantic gesture, just human contact, skin on skin. Acknowledgement that she had been brave enough to tell the truth, and he was brave enough to receive it. Thank you. Elena looked confused. For what? For trusting me with that. For being honest. For letting me see you. They sat holding hands across the table while the restaurant moved around them, other diners engaged in their own dramas and celebrations, unaware of the small significant thing happening 2 feet away. Marcus didn't let go of her hand when he started talking. My turn? Elena nodded, couldn't speak. I think about Shanice every day, not because I miss her. I don't, not really, but because I'm terrified I'm turning Jordan into a kid who'll spend his whole life wondering why his mother didn't love him enough to stay. He took a breath, felt the familiar weight of this particular fear. He asks about her sometimes. Where's Mommy? Why did she leave? Did I do something wrong? And I have to look at my 7-year-old son and explain that sometimes people can't be what you need them to be. That love isn't always enough. Elena's grip on his hand tightened. But how do you tell a kid that without breaking him? How do you protect him from feeling abandoned without lying about why she left? Marcus felt his voice starting to crack, pushed through it. Truth is, Elena, I'm not sure I'm enough for him. I'm one person trying to be 2 parents. I work full-time to keep a roof over our heads. I miss school events because I can't leave work. I feed him cereal for dinner some nights because I'm too exhausted to cook. And he's such a good kid. Never complains, always understanding. But sometimes I see him watching other families at the park. Families with mom and dad. Families that look complete. And I wonder if I'm depriving him of something he deserves. His voice finally broke. So yeah, I'm terrified too. Terrified I'm not enough. Terrified I'm messing up the most important thing I'll ever do. They sat there crying quietly. 2 strangers who met 24 hours ago, sharing truths they hadn't told anyone. The waiter approached, saw tears, retreated without comment. Elena's voice was rough when she finally spoke. You're enough. Jordan adores you. Anyone can see that. And you're not failing at being human. You're here, aren't you? Being brave enough to try. They released hands slowly, both reaching for napkins, both wiping away evidence of vulnerability. The coffee was cold. Marcus signaled for fresh cups, and they waited in silence for the waiter to replace what had gone cold. The new coffee arrived steaming. Elena wrapped both hands around the cup like she was drawing warmth from it. Do you hate her? Shanice? Marcus considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. I did. For about a year after she left, I hated her so much I couldn't function. Would lie awake imagining confrontations, arguments I'd never have. But hate takes energy I needed for Jordan. So I let it go. Tried to understand. She was 23 when she got pregnant. We'd been dating 6 months. She was honest, said she wasn't sure she wanted to be a mother. But I was so excited about being a dad, I convinced her it would be fine. We'd figure it out together. Marcus smiled without humor. We didn't figure it out. She tried for 4 years. I give her credit for that. But eventually she broke. Left a note saying, I can't breathe anymore, I'm sorry. And she was gone. Do you hear from her? Money sometimes. Card on Jordan's birthday. But no visits, no calls. It's probably better that way. Consistency matters more than occasional appearances. Elena absorbed this, then looked down at her own coffee. Your father, the one who lost everything. Do you still talk to him? Marcus had turned the question around on her without her noticing. Smooth reversal that made Elena realize he was better at this than his quiet demeanor suggested. He died 2 years ago, heart attack. We'd been distant for a long time. After the bankruptcy, he gave up, just stopped fighting. Took a job as a janitor, not because it was the only option, but because he'd convinced himself he deserved nothing better. I watched him shrink into himself. Pain threaded through her voice. I tried to help, offered to pay off debts, set him up in business again. He refused everything, said he didn't want my charity. We fought about it, said terrible things. Then we just stopped talking. When he died, I paid for the funeral. Expensive casket, big service, all the things he would have hated. I told myself I was honoring him, but really I was trying to prove I'd won, that I didn't end up like him. She whispered the next part. I'm not sure I did win, though. Marcus let the silence sit for a moment before responding. Winning isn't about money, Elena. Your father lost money. But did he have people who loved him? Me. When I was younger, before everything fell apart, he was a good dad then. Then he won something you haven't yet. He had you. Elena felt the truth of that statement cut deeper than intended. She had built an empire but couldn't remember the last time someone had needed her for something other than capital allocation or strategic guidance. What's it like? She asked, weak. Being lonely when you have someone depending on you? Marcus set down his coffee cup with careful precision. It's complicated, because I'm never physically alone. Jordan's always there. But sometimes I'm lonely for connection, for adult conversation, for someone to ask, how was your day, and actually care about the answer. Most nights, after Jordan's asleep, I sit on the couch and just exist. Too tired to do anything productive, too wired to sleep. Just sit there in the quiet house, thinking about how this is my life now. And it's a good life. I love Jordan, wouldn't trade him for anything. But it's lonely. He turned the question back. What about you? What's loneliness like when you're surrounded by people all day? Elena thought about how to articulate something she barely understood herself. It's different. I'm in meetings constantly, talking, negotiating, making decisions. but none of it's real. It's all transactional. What can you do for me? What can I do for you? How do we both win? I have dinner with clients, drinks with investors, networking events where I smile and make small talk, but I go home alone every night, and in the quiet of my apartment, I realize nobody there knows me. Not really. I could disappear tomorrow and someone would fill my position within a week. Company would keep running. Life would continue. And that's terrifying. Realizing you're replaceable even in the life you built. Marcus's expression softened with understanding. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Quite a pair. They both smiled, and the loneliness felt fractionally less heavy, divided between two people instead of carried alone. Want to walk? There's a park nearby. Yes. They paid and walked outside into October air. Marcus walked on the street side. Old-fashioned gesture Elena found touching. 2 blocks later, they reached a small park with a pond reflecting streetlights. They sat on a bench facing the water. Marcus broke the silence. Can I ask you something scary? Elena's heart rate spiked. Okay. What happens Monday morning? When this weekend is over and we go back to our real lives, do we keep doing this? Elena felt the question expose every fear she had been trying not to examine. I don't know. I want to say yes, but I'm terrified. Terrified of what? Terrified that Monday I'll wake up and my rational brain will take over. I'll think about logistics, how different our lives are, how complicated this could get. I'll calculate risk versus reward and decide it's not worth it. She paused, making herself continue. I'm terrified I'll hurt you. Or you'll hurt me. Or worse, we'll hurt Jordan. Because if we try this and it fails, he's the one who pays the price. Marcus listened without interrupting. I'm also terrified of letting you into my real life. Because when you know who I am, really know, not just Elena who eats alone, you might see me differently. You might want things. Everyone wants things. Her voice broke. And I'm terrified that you're too good to be true. That this feeling I have right now, this lightness, this hope, is temporary. That I'll get used to it and then you'll leave and I'll be more alone than I was before. Marcus turned to face her fully on the bench, and Elena forced herself to maintain eye contact even though every instinct screamed to look away, to protect herself from whatever he was about to say. Elena, look at me. She did. His eyes were serious, steady. I can't promise I won't hurt you. I can't promise this will work. I've been hurt before. You've been hurt before. That's what happens when you let people in. But I can promise I'll be honest. I won't lie to you. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not to keep you around. And I won't use you, not for money, not for status, not for anything. He took her hand again, and this time the gesture felt less like comfort and more like commitment. I like you, Elena. Not billionaire Elena. Not CEO Elena. Just Elena who admitted she doesn't know how to be vulnerable. Elena who cried telling me about her panic attack. Elena who's sitting here in a park at 10 p.m. on a Saturday night taking a risk on someone she met 24 hours ago. He paused, making sure she was hearing him. That Elena? She's worth the risk. Elena felt something break open in her chest, not painfully, but like a door that had been locked too long finally swinging open to let light through. She leaned forward and kissed him. Not tentative, not careful, just honest. Marcus kissed back, and it wasn't a movie kiss. It was real, slightly awkward, deeply felt, full of hope and fear in equal measure. They pulled apart, both breathing hard. I'm still terrified. Me too. But I want to try. Me too. They sat on the bench holding hands, looking at the pond where ducks slept in perfect trust, and Elena thought about how this willingness to be terrified and try anyway, might be the bravest thing she had ever done. So what do we do? How do we do this? Elena thought about logistics, about the gulf between their lives that seemed impossible to bridge in practical terms. Slowly. We take it slow. No rushing, no pressure. We keep seeing each other, keep talking, see where it goes. What about Jordan? When does he meet me officially? Elena appreciated the question, appreciated that Marcus was thinking about his son's emotional welfare before his own desires. When you're ready, when you're sure this isn't just weekend magic. Thank you. He gets attached easily. I need to be careful. I understand. They walked back to the restaurant parking lot in comfortable silence. At Elena's car, sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than Marcus made in 2 years, they stopped. Awkward moment of not knowing how to say goodbye. Can I text you tomorrow? I'd like that. And maybe coffee? During the week? Elena smiled. Coffee sounds good. They kissed again, shorter this time, sweeter. Marcus stepped back. Good night, Elena. Good night, Marcus. Elena drove home through empty Philadelphia streets, and for the first time in years, her apartment didn't feel like the end point of her day. It felt like the space between seeing Marcus again. Sunday morning arrived with pale sunlight that felt gentler than usual. Elena woke without an alarm at 8. Unprecedented laziness that would have horrified her younger self. She lay in bed replaying the previous night frame by frame. The kiss, the conversation, the promise to try. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Good morning. Thank you for last night. For taking the risk. For the kiss. For all of it. Coffee Wednesday? Elena responded immediately, not overthinking, not calculating angles. Wednesday works. And Marcus, thank you for being worth the risk. She sat up in bed, hugging her phone like a teenager, and thought about how ridiculous this was. A 38-year-old billionaire acting like she had never been kissed before. But maybe that was the truth of it. She had been kissed before, plenty of times, but never by someone who saw her as just Elena. Never by someone who asked for nothing except her honest company. Marcus picked up Jordan from Mrs. Chen's at 9. Jordan bounded out the door with the inexhaustible energy of 7-year-olds everywhere. Did you have fun? Marcus buckled him into the passenger seat. Yeah, buddy, I did. Are you gonna see her again? Yeah. Coffee on Wednesday. Jordan processed this with visible satisfaction. Do you like her? Marcus pulled out of the parking lot, navigating Sunday morning traffic. Yeah, I really do. Good. At home, Marcus made pancakes, Jordan's favorite, shaped like misshapen circles that Jordan insisted were planets. They ate at the small kitchen table covered with Jordan's latest drawings, and Marcus thought about how this was his life. This kitchen, this kid, these simple Sunday mornings. And maybe there was room for more. For her. The thought was terrifying. The thought was good. Wednesday arrived with autumn rain turning Philadelphia streets into reflective surfaces. Elena left her office at noon, Priya's shock visible in the way her mouth literally fell open. You're leaving? At noon? For coffee? Yes. With him? With Marcus? Yes. Priya studied her with an expression Elena couldn't quite decode. You're different. In a good way. I'm trying to be. Marcus left the construction site at 11:30, telling Dave he was using his lunch break. Dave's knowing grin suggested he understood more than Marcus had told him. They met at a small coffee shop in a neighborhood that was neither Elena's world nor Marcus's, neutral territory where neither of them had home field advantage. Elena arrived first, nervous habit making her early. Marcus walked in at exactly noon, saw her, smiled. They hugged like it was the most natural thing in the world, sat across from each other at a worn wooden table. ordered coffee from a barista who couldn't care less who they were or what they meant to each other. So, how's your Monday through Wednesday been? Busy? Meetings? Conference calls? The usual? But, but? Elena's smile was shy, vulnerable in a way that made Marcus want to protect whatever fragile thing was blooming between them. But I left work at 6 p.m. yesterday. First time in months. Marcus reached across the table, took her hand. I'm making space too. This is going to be hard, isn't it? Probably. We're going to mess up sometimes. Definitely. But we're going to try anyway? Marcus looked at her. Really looked, seeing past the expensive clothes and careful makeup to the woman underneath who was just as scared as he was, and knew his answer. We're going to try anyway. Saturday evening, Elena arrived at Cornerstone Restaurant at 6:55. 5 minutes early, compulsive punctuality she couldn't shake. She wore dark pants and a silk blouse, hair down, makeup subtle. The hostess led her to the same section where they had met that first night. Marcus arrived at exactly 7. Elena watched him walk through the entrance, scan the room, find her. He wore the blue shirt Jordan had picked, dark jeans, the worn jacket. As he crossed toward her, he moved with quiet dignity, not aggressive or apologetic, just present. They hugged, easier this time, more natural. They sat across from each other. The same waiter from Wednesday appeared, professional smile suggesting he had seen enough restaurant romance to find this neither surprising nor particularly interesting. Coffee? They both nodded, and the waiter disappeared with efficient speed. Marcus leaned forward slightly, maintaining eye contact in that steady way that made Elena feel simultaneously exposed and safe. So, tell me something true. The request had become their ritual. 3 meetings, 3 times he had asked for truth instead of small talk. Elena appreciated that he didn't waste time on weather or traffic or any of the other meaningless exchanges people used to avoid real conversation. But tonight, the truth sitting heaviest in her chest felt too large to say out loud, so she started smaller. I've been thinking about my father all week, about what you said, that he won something I haven't because he had me. Her fingers traced patterns on the tablecloth. I built everything I have trying not to become him. Trying not to need anyone, not to depend on anyone, not to give anyone the power to destroy me the way bankruptcy destroyed him. Marcus listened without interrupting. And I succeeded. I'm financially invincible. No one can take from me what I won't give them. But in the process, I made myself emotionally invincible too. And that's just another word for alone. The coffee arrived. Elena wrapped her hands around the cup, drawing comfort from the heat. I think I've been running so hard from his weakness that I never stopped to consider his strength. He loved deeply enough to be destroyed by loss. I've loved nothing deeply enough to be hurt by it. Her voice dropped. Until maybe now. The last part came out quieter than she intended, vulnerable in a way that made her want to take it back immediately. But Marcus's expression didn't change, didn't show pity or triumph or any of the reactions she had feared. That's not weakness. His voice was gentle but certain. Being capable of love isn't weakness. It's the only thing that makes being human worth the trouble. Elena felt tears threatening again, her usual control fraying at the edges every time she sat across from this man who refused to let her hide. When do I get to meet him? Jordan, I mean. For real. Marcus's entire demeanor shifted at the mention of his son, the way it always did. Tension and tenderness mixing in his expression. Soon. Maybe next week? Nothing formal. Just the park. Casual. What if he doesn't like me? Marcus smiled, and it reached his eyes in a way that made Elena's chest ache. He's 7. If you talk to him about planets or superheroes, you're golden. Planets. Got it. I can talk planets. They both laughed, and the moment of levity felt like oxygen after holding her breath too long. The conversation flowed easier after that. Marcus telling stories about Jordan's latest obsession with black holes, and how he had tried to create one in the bathtub using a drain and strategic water flow. Elena talking about Priya's increasing suspicion that something significant was happening, the way she had started scheduling meetings around Elena's requests for personal time instead of fighting them. She thinks I'm having a midlife crisis. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Are you? Elena considered the question seriously. Maybe, but if this is a crisis, it's the best thing that's happened to me in years. They ordered food this time. Neither of them had eaten dinner before arriving, and the pretense of just coffee felt unnecessary. Simple meals that arrived quickly and were consumed slowly while they talked about everything and nothing. Marcus described the medical building project he was working on, the satisfaction of watching something take shape from blueprint to reality. Elena talked about a startup she was considering investing in, careful to keep details vague, but enjoying the intellectual exercise of explaining why the founder's vision excited her. You light up when you talk about work. Elena paused mid-sentence. Do I? Yeah, your whole face changes. It's not all bad what you do. You just forgot to make space for anything else. The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. Elena had spent so long thinking of work as the thing that had stolen her life that she had forgotten it was also the thing she was genuinely good at, the place where her particular combination of analytical skill and risk tolerance created real value. I used to love it, before it became the only thing. Maybe you can love it again, now that it's not the only thing. The waiter cleared their plates. The restaurant had filled with Saturday evening couples and groups, the ambient noise level rising to the point where Marcus and Elena existed in a bubble of relative privacy. Despite being surrounded by people, Marcus's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, smiled, turned the screen toward Elena. Mrs. Chen had sent a photo. Jordan at her kitchen table, covered in flour, grinning at the camera with the uncomplicated joy of a child making cookies with a grandmother figure who spoiled him in all the right ways. She's teaching him to bake. This should be interesting. Elena stared at the photo longer than necessary, memorizing Jordan's face, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gap in his front teeth, the dusting of flour in his hair. This was the child she would meet next week. This was the child who had asked Marcus if he was lonely, who had inadvertently pushed his father back into the world of adult connection, who would be affected by whatever happened between Elena and Marcus, whether they wanted him to be or not. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders. He's beautiful. He's a menace, but yeah, he's pretty great. Marcus's phone buzzed again, this time a call, not a text. Mrs. Chen's name on the screen. Marcus's expression shifted immediately from relaxed to alert, and Elena felt her stomach drop before he even answered. Mrs. Chen? Is everything okay? Elena watched his face as he listened, saw the tension increase incrementally with each second. Her own breath caught in sympathetic response to whatever was being communicated on the other end of the line. No, it's fine, I'm coming. 15 minutes, thank you. He hung up and looked at Elena with an expression that mixed frustration and resignation, and something that might have been embarrassment. Jordan had a nightmare. About his mom. He's asking for me. Marcus pulled out his wallet, started calculating his share of the bill with the kind of rushed arithmetic that comes from needing to leave immediately but not wanting to be rude about it. Elena put her hand over his, stilling the motion. Go. I'll take care of this. I can't just... Yes, you can. Go take care of your son. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, and Elena saw him wrestling with pride and practicality and the ingrained habit of not accepting help from anyone, especially someone he was trying to impress. Thank you. He stood, grabbed his jacket. I'm sorry. Don't be. This is who you are. It's one of the things I... She stopped herself before finishing the sentence, but Marcus's expression suggested he heard the unspoken word anyway. He leaned down, kiss at her forehead, quick and gentle, and somehow more intimate than the kiss they had shared in the park. Then he was gone, moving through the restaurant with that same careful speed, and Elena was alone again at a table with 2 coffee cups and the check that she absolutely did not mind paying. She signaled for the waiter, settled the bill with cash and a generous tip, then sat for another moment in the space Marcus had vacated. Around her, other couples continued their evenings undisturbed. No children waking from nightmares, no responsibilities that couldn't wait, just uninterrupted adult time that Elena suddenly realized was both a luxury and a limitation. Her phone buzzed as she reached the parking lot. "I'm so sorry." Jordan had a bad dream about Shanice leaving again. Sometimes it hits him out of nowhere. Elena stood beside her car, cold October air cutting through her thin blouse, and typed her response carefully. "Don't apologize. Is he okay?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "He's okay now. Wanted to know if you were real or if I made you up. Told him you're real." Elena felt her throat tighten reading that. Jordan had been dreaming about his mother leaving and woken up worried his father's new person might be imaginary, the anxiety of a child who had learned early that adults could disappear without warning. What did he say? "He said you better be real because he has questions about planets." Elena smiled despite the ache in her chest. She typed back quickly, before her rational brain could edit the impulse. "Tell him I'm real, and I have answers about planets. Some of them might even be accurate." Marcus's response was immediate. "He's already planning his interrogation. Fair warning, he takes space very seriously." Elena got in her car but didn't start the engine. Just sat in the parking lot reading and rereading the text messages, thinking about Jordan taking space seriously and Marcus having to leave dinner to comfort his son, and how all of this complicated, beautiful, messy reality was what she had signed up for when she agreed to try. Her phone rang. "Marcus. Hi, Jordan's asleep. I need to tell you something." Elena's heart rate picked up. "Okay, I looked you up this week. After our first coffee, I Googled your name and I know who you are, what you've built. The Martinez Capital acquisition last year, the Forbes profile, all of it." Elena's entire body went rigid. The carefully constructed anonymity she had maintained for 6 days collapsed in an instant, and with it all the protection that anonymity had provided. He knew, and he was calling to... what? Explain why this couldn't work? Apologize for wasting her time? "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," Marcus continued before she could formulate a response. "But I wanted to be honest about it before we went any further. I know you didn't tell me for a reason, and I respect that. But I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know." "Are you..." Elena's voice came out rough. She cleared her throat, tried again. "Are you ending this?" Silence on the other end. Then Marcus's voice, confused. "What? No? Why would I be ending this?" "Because now you know, and everyone who knows wants something." "Elena." His voice was patient, gentle, like he was talking to someone on the edge of a building. "I don't want your money. I don't want an investment or a loan or any of the things you're calculating right now. I want to see you again. I want Jordan to meet you. I want to figure out if we can make this work despite all the reasons it shouldn't." Elena felt tears running down her face, the kind of crying that starts before you realize it's happening. "Everyone wants something. I want you to stop assuming the worst of people. I want you to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone could see you for who you are. All of it. The money and the success and the panic attacks and the lonely dinners, and still want to know more. Not because of what you've built, but because of who you are when you're just Elena." She couldn't speak, could barely breathe, just sat in her car crying while Marcus waited on the other end of the line. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking if you still want to get coffee next week. That's it. Everything else, we figure out as we go. Why? The word came out broken. Why do you want this when it's so complicated? Because you're worth it. Because the version of you that admitted eating dinner alone every night and cried in a restaurant and kissed me in a park, that person is worth every complication. Elena wiped her face with the back of her hand, probably destroying her makeup but not caring. I'm terrified. I know. Me too. I don't know how to do this. Let someone in. Trust that they won't use me. Then we learn together. One day at a time. No pressure. No expectations. Just trying. She sat with that for a long moment, feeling the fear and the possibility warring in her chest. Outside the car, rain finally started. Light drops that quickly built to a steady rhythm against the windshield. Jordan really has questions about planets? Marcus laughed, relief evident in the sound. So many questions. He's been reading about neutron stars. Be prepared for extremely specific inquiries about gravitational collapse. I can handle neutron stars. Then we're still good? You're not running away because I violated the no last names rule? Elena surprised herself by laughing through the tears. I'm not running away. But Marcus? Yeah. Thank you for telling me. For being honest even when it was awkward. Honesty is all I've got to offer. Well, that and a 7-year-old with opinions about astrophysics. They said goodnight after that, and Elena drove home through rain-slicked streets thinking about how Marcus knowing changed everything and nothing. Changed everything because the protective layer of anonymity was gone. Changed nothing because he had known for days and still chosen to show up, still asked her to coffee, still introduced her, theoretically, to his son. At home, she stood in her empty apartment looking at the city lights through rain-streaked windows and realized the fear was still there, but the loneliness felt different, less absolute, less like a permanent condition, and more like a phase she was moving through toward something else. Sunday morning arrived with a text from Marcus sent at 6:30 a.m. Jordan wants to know if you've ever seen Saturn through a telescope. Apparently, this is critically important information. Elena responded from bed, still half asleep but smiling at her phone like an idiot. I haven't, but I would like to. Does he know where we can see one? The response came quickly. He's now researching observatories within driving distance. You've created a monster. Good. I like monsters. The week passed in a strange rhythm, Elena maintaining her professional obligations while a parallel track of text messages with Marcus ran underneath like a second heartbeat. Photos of Jordan's latest space drawings, reports on cookie baking disasters at Mrs. Chen's, questions about Elena's work that Marcus asked with genuine curiosity rather than strategic interest. Wednesday, Marcus texted, Jordan wants to meet you. Saturday at the park, 2 p.m., bring questions about space. He's prepared a list. Elena's chest tightened. This was the next step. Meeting the 7-year-old who had already been abandoned once. I'm ready. Saturday at 2. Saturday arrived with clear skies and temperatures in the low 50s. Perfect autumn weather that made Elena grateful she wouldn't have to make a first impression while shivering. She changed clothes 4 times before settling on jeans, comfortable boots, and a sweater that was nice but not trying too hard nice. Hair in a loose ponytail. Minimal makeup. The goal was approachable, not intimidating. The park was in Marcus's neighborhood, 20 minutes from Elena's penthouse but feeling like a different city entirely. Older houses, older cars, older infrastructure. The playground equipment showed its age, but children played on it with the same joy kids brought to everything. Elena spotted Marcus immediately, standing near the swings, and beside him, Jordan. Her breath caught seeing them together. The physical resemblance was strong. Same bone structure, same way of holding themselves, same careful observation of their surroundings. But where Marcus projected weathered patience, Jordan radiated barely contained energy, bouncing slightly on his toes like he might launch himself into orbit at any moment. Elena walked toward them, and Jordan spotted her first. He whispered something to Marcus, who turned and smiled. She watched them have a quick exchange, Marcus saying something, Jordan nodding seriously, before Jordan broke away and ran toward her. He stopped a few feet away, suddenly shy now that she was real instead of theoretical. "Hi, I'm Jordan." Elena crouched down to his eye level, remembering advice from a colleague with kids about not towering over children when you first meet them. "Hi, Jordan. I'm Elena. Your dad tells me you have questions about planets." Jordan's face lit up like she had given him permission to be exactly who he was. "So many questions. Do you know about neutron stars?" "Some, but I bet you know more than me. Want to teach me?" They walked toward the playground together, Jordan chattering about stellar collapse and gravitational forces with the passionate intensity only 7-year-olds could sustain. Marcus fell into step beside Elena, and she felt his hand brush hers briefly. Deliberate contact that communicated volumes. At the playground, Jordan demonstrated his climbing skills while simultaneously explaining how black holes formed. Elena listened with genuine interest, asking questions when appropriate, marveling at how a child could hold complex scientific concepts alongside the simple joy of hanging upside down from monkey bars. Marcus stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You're doing great. He's incredible. How do you keep up with him?" "I don't. I just try not to fall too far behind." Jordan dropped from the monkey bars and ran over, breathless. "Can we go see the pond? I want to show Elena the ducks." They walked to the small pond at the park's edge, the same pond where Elena and Marcus had sat on a bench and decided to try. Jordan ran ahead, searching for ducks with single-minded determination. Marcus took Elena's hand properly this time, fingers interlacing. "He likes you. I can tell." "How can you tell?" "He's showing you his favorite things. That's how Jordan says someone matters." Elena watched Jordan squat at the pond's edge, studying ducks with the same intensity he brought to neutron stars. "What if I mess this up? What if I disappoint him?" Marcus squeezed her hand. "Then we deal with it. Together. But Elena, you're already here. You showed up. That's more than his mother did." The comparison felt too weighty for a first meeting, but Elena understood what Marcus was saying. Showing up was the baseline. Everything else they would figure out. Jordan ran back, slightly muddy but triumphant. "There are 7 ducks. I counted. Do you know why ducks sleep with their heads under their wings?" Elena admitted she didn't, and Jordan launched into an explanation involving thermoregulation that was surprisingly accurate for a second grader. She listened, asked follow-up questions, and felt something shift in her chest. Not love yet, but the precursor to it. The recognition that this child, with his endless questions and uncomplicated joy, could become someone she cared about protecting. After an hour, Jordan's energy finally flagged. They sat on a bench, Jordan between Elena and Marcus, swinging his legs and eating the granola bar Marcus had brought. "Elena?" "Yeah, buddy? Are you my dad's girlfriend?" Elena glanced at Marcus, who looked equally caught off guard by the direct question. She chose honesty. "We're still figuring that out, but I really like your dad, and I really like you." Jordan considered this with visible seriousness. "Okay, but if you become his girlfriend, does that mean you'll be around a lot? Would that be okay with you?" "Yeah? You're cool? And you know about space." Jordan paused, then added with 7-year-old logic. "Plus, Dad's been happier since he met you. He smiles more." Elena felt her throat tighten. She looked at Marcus, who was staring at his son with an expression of mixed pride and surprise that his emotional state was apparently that transparent. "Well, I've been happier since I met him too. And you?" Jordan nodded like this settled something important, then jumped off the bench. "Can I go on the slide one more time?" 5 minutes. Then we need to get you back to Mrs. Chen's." Jordan ran toward the playground with renewed energy. Marcus and Elena sat in silence, watching him climb the ladder. "That went better than I expected." Elena leaned into Marcus slightly, feeling his warmth through their layers of clothing. "He's wonderful. You're raising someone really special." "We're raising him, not we, yet, but—" Marcus stumbled over the words, caught between acknowledging reality and not moving too fast. Elena understood what he meant. "I know. And I'm honored to be included, even hypothetically." They collected Jordan after his final slide run and walked back to Marcus's car, an older Honda Civic with a car seat in back and evidence of family life in every surface. Jordan chattered the entire way about whether Elena had any pets and what her favorite planet was, and whether she had ever been to the Grand Canyon. At the car, Jordan hugged Elena spontaneously, quick squeeze around her waist before climbing into his car seat. The gesture was so natural, so unguarded, that Elena felt tears threatening. Marcus closed Jordan's door and turned to Elena. They stood in the parking lot, autumn sun painting everything gold, and looked at each other with the understanding that something significant had just happened. "Thank you for today. Thank you for trusting me with him." Marcus kissed her, brief and gentle, conscious of Jordan watching from the car with undisguised interest. Coffee Wednesday. Coffee Wednesday. Elena drove home thinking about Jordan's questions and the way he had looked at her when explaining stellar collapse, like her understanding mattered to him, like he wanted her to see what he saw. And she thought about Marcus's hand in hers and the way he had said, "We're raising him," before catching himself, and how the correction had felt less like pulling back and more like acknowledging they weren't there yet, but could be someday. At home, her phone buzzed with a photo from Marcus, Jordan at Mrs. Chen's kitchen table, holding up a drawing. Elena zoomed in and saw crude but enthusiastic depictions of 3 stick figures labeled Dad, Jordan, and Elena, standing under a night sky full of stars. Elena saved the photo to her phone and sat on her couch looking at it until the screen dimmed. Then she opened her laptop, not to work, but to research observatories within driving distance of Philadelphia. If Jordan wanted to see Saturn through a telescope, she would make that happen. Wednesday's coffee date was easier than the previous ones, the territory more familiar now, the rhythm of their conversation established. They talked about Jordan's reaction to meeting Elena, about work projects, about mundane details of daily life that somehow felt significant when shared. Marcus mentioned Jordan's upcoming school play, generic Thanksgiving production where Jordan had been cast as a tree. Elena laughed at the description, then heard herself asking if she could come watch. Marcus's expression shifted to something vulnerable. "You want to sit through an elementary school play? They're objectively terrible." "I want to see Jordan be a tree, if that's okay." "It's more than okay. It's—" Marcus stopped, seemed to recalibrate what he was about to say. "It would mean a lot to both of us." They made plans. Elena would meet them at the school auditorium next Friday evening. She would sit with Marcus in folding chairs designed for people 6 inches shorter than either of them, and they would watch Jordan stand very still while other children sang songs about turkeys and harvest. The mundanity of it felt revolutionary. Thursday afternoon, Elena's phone rang with an unknown Philadelphia number. She almost didn't answer. Usually unknown numbers meant either spam or emergencies, neither of which she wanted to deal with. But something made her pick up. "Is this Elena Martinez?" Female voice, older, with the particular cadence that suggested English was a second language mastered through decades of use. "Yes. Who's calling?" "This is Mrs. Chen, Marcus's neighbor. I hope you don't mind. Marcus gave me your number in case of emergency with Jordan." Elena's heart rate spiked. "Is Jordan okay?" "Jordan is fine. I'm calling about something else." A pause, then, "I've known Marcus 3 years. I've watched him raise that boy alone, work himself exhausted, never complain. He's a good man." Elena wasn't sure if this was endorsement or warning. He is. I saw you with Jordan on Saturday. The way you listened to him. The way you looked at Marcus. I'm calling to tell you, don't break them. Marcus has been hurt enough. And Jordan, he doesn't remember his mother, but he knows what it means when someone leaves. The words landed with the weight of ultimatum, even though Mrs. Chen's tone remained gentle. I don't plan to leave. Plans change. People change. I'm just saying, if you're not serious, better to end it now before Jordan gets more attached, before Marcus starts imagining a future that includes you. Elena felt defensive anger rising, but pushed it down. Mrs. Chen wasn't being cruel. She was being protective of people she loved, which was exactly what Elena would have done in her position. I understand your concern, and I appreciate that you care about them enough to call, but I'm not Shanice. I'm not going to wake up one morning and decide this is too hard. Her voice caught. I'm trying to build something real, and I know how much is at stake. Silence on the other end. Then, good. That's what I needed to hear. Not the words, but the way you said them. Like you're scared, but doing it anyway. I am scared. Terrified, actually. Mrs. Chen's laugh was warm. Good. People who aren't scared don't take things seriously. You be scared. Just don't let the fear make you run. They hung up after brief pleasantries, and Elena sat at her desk staring at nothing. Mrs. Chen's call had made everything more real somehow, the weight of other people's investment in this relationship. The fact that Marcus and Jordan came as a package deal that included a protective neighbor who would call strangers to deliver warnings wrapped in concern. Elena texted Marcus. Mrs. Chen called me. His response was immediate. Oh, God, what did she say? She basically told me not to break your hearts. I like her. She's protective. Sorry if she overstepped. She didn't. She loves you both. That's clear. Elena stared at the message thread, then added, I'm not going anywhere, Marcus. Just so you know. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I know, but it helps hearing you say it. Friday, Elena left work at 4 for Jordan's Thanksgiving play. At the elementary school, she navigated a parking lot full of SUVs, her Mercedes conspicuous. Inside, Marcus waved from saved seats. You came. I said I would. Jordan waved from backstage in his tree costume. Brown fabric and construction paper leaves. The play was terrible. Off-key singing, forgotten lines, crying children. But Jordan stood perfectly still, taking his role seriously. Afterward, he ran to Marcus first, then turned to Elena. Did you see me? I didn't move at all. You were the best tree I've ever seen. Can Elena come to dinner? Mrs. Chen made lasagna. At Mrs. Chen's apartment, they ate lasagna at a too-small table, while Jordan analyzed every aspect of the production. Mrs. Chen watched Elena with sharp eyes, but her expression held approval. Jordan fell asleep mid-sentence about turkeys. Marcus carried him home, Elena walking beside them through the November night. At his door, Jordan sleeping in his arms, Marcus looked at her. Thank you for coming. It meant everything. Elena kissed his cheek. Good night, Marcus. Weeks passed. Coffee Wednesdays, dinners with Jordan on weekends, text messages about fear and hope. Elena left work at 6 3 days a week, went to Jordan's soccer games, learned to talk about planetary formation. They hadn't defined what they were. Boyfriend and girlfriend felt too juvenile and too presumptuous. But whatever they were building felt solid. Sunday evening, 6 weeks after that first night at the restaurant, Elena sat on Marcus's thrift store couch watching Jordan demonstrate his latest Lego creation, something involving spaceships and black holes that made architectural sense only in the mind of a 7-year-old. Marcus sat beside her, his thigh pressed against hers, and she felt the simple contentment of being exactly where she wanted to be. Jordan finished his demonstration and looked at them seriously. Elena, are you my dad's girlfriend now? Because you're here all the time, and you hold hands, and that's what girlfriends do. Marcus and Elena exchanged glances, and she saw her own uncertainty reflected in his expression. They had been avoiding the definition, afraid that naming it would somehow make it more fragile. "Would you be okay with that?" Elena heard herself asking. "If I was?" Jordan considered the question with visible care. "Yeah, you're nice, and you make Dad happy, and you're not weird about my questions." He paused. "Plus, you promised to take us to see Saturn through a telescope, and girlfriends keep promises." Marcus laughed, and Elena felt something loosen in her chest. Permission from the person whose opinion mattered most. "Then yeah, I guess I'm your dad's girlfriend." Jordan nodded, like this settled something important. "Good. Can I go show Mrs. Chen my Lego?" 5 minutes. Jordan grabbed his creation and disappeared out the door, leaving Marcus and Elena alone in the small apartment with its worn furniture and walls covered in a child's drawings. "So," Marcus turned to face her, "I guess we're official now. 7-year-old approved. Is that okay? I probably should have asked you first before confirming to your son that I'm your girlfriend." "It's more than okay." Marcus took her hand. "I've wanted to call you that for weeks, but didn't know if you were ready." Elena thought about her empty penthouse that felt less empty now, because she spent more time here. She thought about board meetings where she found herself mentally composing texts to Marcus about absurd things executives said. She thought about how Jordan had started signing his drawings to her, and how Mrs. Chen had stopped issuing warnings and started issuing dinner invitations. "I'm ready. I'm terrified, but I'm ready." "Good. Because I'm in love with you, and it's been killing me not saying it." The words hung in the air between them, and Elena felt her eyes fill with tears for what felt like the 100th time since meeting this man who kept making her cry in ways that felt like healing. "I'm in love with you too. You and your son and your worn-out couch and your neighborhood that's nothing like mine but feels more like home than anywhere I've ever lived." Marcus kissed her, and this time there was no sleeping child to interrupt, no restaurant patrons to witness, just the two of them in his small apartment building, something neither of them had quite believed was possible 6 weeks ago. When they pulled apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "So what now?" Elena thought about the question, about logistics and complications and the 1,000 practical considerations of building a relationship across economic divides and different worlds. But underneath all that was something simpler. Now we keep trying, one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just this. Just this. Marcus echoed her words from that first night, and Elena heard the promise in them, that just this, just trying, just showing up, might be enough to build something that lasted. Jordan burst back through the door, announcement about Mrs. Chen's reaction to his Lego already forming on his lips, and Elena felt herself smile at the interruption rather than resent it. This was her life now, not the controlled, solitary existence she had built, but this messy, complicated, beautiful thing where a 7-year-old's opinions mattered and dinner was eaten at 2 small tables and love felt less like a risk and more like the only logical choice. Not every meeting needed an ending. Sometimes the value was simply in reminding yourself that you still had the capacity to connect in ways that were kind and healthy and real. Sometimes the bravest thing was to show up, be seen, and let someone else do the same.